Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Marcos Cabrera, and I'm the Director of Communications for the Salinas Union High School District, and I'm also a contributing reporter for Palabra, publication of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. I'm happy to moderate this exciting discussion today, Feeding a Nation, a look at farm workers in the media, as part of the 2021 NAHJ conference. Now, growing up in Salinas Valley, the salad bowl of the world, I had direct access to the complex issues surrounding farm and ag labor and how these issues played out in local, regional, state, and national media. And I even remember being a student reporter and interviewing local farm leaders and activists the day that Cesar Chavez died. It was my first real experience covering a massive national news story. Even as a young high school reporter, taking notes and talking to organizers, recalling the farm worker movement origins, it really gave me a deep sense of the impact that the UFW had, not only in my hometown, but on the entire nation, and the importance of covering that story with delicacy, care, and most importantly, with dignity. Now, as the decades have passed, we are upon a new era of media coverage regarding farm labor that has shifted into multiple directions. And with the advent of social media, some of the longest held issues within the farm worker movement, working conditions and the educational plight of farm worker children, they have been magnified under a new lens. So let's go ahead and meet this panel. I'm extremely excited to moderate this panel because, quite simply, we are in the presence of royalty. Here to discuss the topics of farm workers in media, I have three distinguished guests, including one cultural icon and one important leader who is making moves on the national level and is a descendant of another icon. First off, let me introduce David Damian Figueroa of Farm Worker Justice. He has produced two critically acclaimed documentaries, The Harvest and Food Chains. Both are available on streaming platforms, including Amazon. He is the former vice president of the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund. And most importantly, in his estimation, he is a former child farm worker. Welcome to this panel, David Damian. Great to have you.
Thank you so much. And I'm also part of the senior team of Farm Worker Justice.
There you go.
Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
And on this panel.
Absolutely. Next up, we have Julie Chavez Rodriguez, Director of Intergovernmental Affairs at the White House. She is on the cabinet there. She is also the daughter of the former president of the UFW, Arturo Rodriguez, and the granddaughter of the immortal Cesar Chavez. Her previous work includes important efforts with the President Obama's administration, and she is just one of the ultimate power players here for just the entire Chicano movement and the farm worker movement. So thank you very much for joining us today, Julie.
Thank you so much, Marcos. It's great to be with you and amongst friends like David and your next guest, who I won't preview for you. So thanks.
Yeah, and we have the big reveal here. So finally, we have just a legend. And I had the great pleasure of meeting this woman once in my hometown of Salinas. And I personally thanked her for helping my grandfather, Agapito Cabrera, receive a retirement pension. He worked the strawberry fields after serving in World War II in Soledad, California. And just meeting her and her grace was just a powerful moment for me in my young life. It's an honor to welcome the president of the Dolores Huerta Foundation and the co-founder of the UFW, Dolores Huerta. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and also with the wonderful panelists here, with David Damian, my good friend. Of course, I'm always honored to be with Julie Chavez Rodriguez, because she is such, you introduced her as a powerhouse, but she's kind of like the kind of silent power that we have, say, with our lights and all of this energy that we have, because her power is always invisible, but very effective. So, and we are so happy that she's part of President Biden's cabinet. So congratulations, Julie. I'm sure that the president is lucky to have you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that. So thank you all for joining us today. NAHJ's mission is dedicated to the recognition and advancement of Latinos in the news industry, but it's also committed to addressing issues within that community. And while we get into more conventional and traditional news coverage in a bit, I wanted to start today's discussion with some reflections on farm worker imagery that have gone viral on social media in the past couple of years. I think now more than ever, we're cognizant of the impact that social media can have on issues of race and society. And you just don't have to look no further than the Pulitzer Prize Board earlier this year delivering a special citation to Darnella Frazier, who was the brave young woman who filmed the brutal murder of George Floyd at the hands of convicted killer Derek Chauvin. We're starting to see how these images have impact in society, have major impact in society, and are kind of steering the conversations, in particular around farm worker issues. So I want to take these first few minutes to display and to discuss 3 recent images that I feel reflect on the realities of farm worker life in very poignant ways. So this may be your first time for each of you maybe seeing some of these images, or you may be familiar with them being passed around on social media. Nonetheless, first off, if we can cue up this photo. We all know that farm labor conditions have been at the forefront of the movement for industry change and unionization efforts. And I want to show this image shot by Andy Halsman. Sometime around 2018, the post that he shared read that workers tend to a field on an ominous looking sky in Camarillo, Southern California, as the Woolsey fire continues to burn. Last year, in particular here in California, when the wildfire season was really raging out of control, this image kind of re-emerged throughout social media and blew up and gained hundreds of thousands, if not millions of impressions and reach. I think it speaks a lot to the issue of the conditions that continue to be a challenge for our farm laborers. And Dolores, I really wanted to start with you, this conversation with you, because you were at the forefront of that movement to secure safe working conditions for all farm laborers. And that was the catalyst for your work, in my estimation. So seeing this image, can you share any initial reflections? And were you familiar with this image or any images similar to it?
Well, as you know, because of global warming, we have had all of these fires in California. I think over 500 fires that we had last year. And again, the fires are burning already. And the farm workers are, right now, the farm workers are out in these fields. The heat quotient has been here. I'm speaking to you from Bakersfield. Yesterday, I think it was 109 degrees. Today, I think it's a little bit cooler, but the temperatures have been very, very hot. And the farm workers, not only out there, are they out there working in the heat, but then they also have to be out there working where the smoke is at. And then they have to also try to protect themselves from COVID. So you might say that this is the worst possible scenario for farm workers in this last year. And it's continuing. And unfortunately, as you may know, many of the farm workers did not get the preventative protective equipment that they needed early on. And of course, this is because of the nature of farm work, because you have the owners, the landowners, they're in their nice air-conditioned offices in San Francisco or Los Angeles or other places. They're not out there in the field with the workers. Because we have in California, we have these plantations where you have hundreds and thousands of workers, and the employer is nowhere to be seen. The workers are left in the hands of labor contractors and foremen, and they don't have sometimes the resources or even the preparation to be able to protect the workers the way that they should. So it has been a very, very bad year for farm workers, and oftentimes the media does not cover them. At the beginning of the pandemic, they kept talking about the essential workers, which were of course, important, the doctors and the nurses and the firefighters and police. And hey, what about the people that are feeding us every day? Those are the farm workers, and they have had a very, very tough year. And of course, many of our undocumented workers did not get the type of resources or assistance that they needed. In California, Governor Newsom was able to give a one-time stimulus a check to the workers, but of course, we needed more.
Thank you. I want to ask David Damien, as a filmmaker, someone who is really cognizant of the effects of imagery and the power just even of a single frame. just any reflections you might want to share on this image and the kind of the discussions surrounding it, and also, you know, where it lends itself to the discussion today of coverage of conditions for farm workers.
Yes, thank you. But I'd like to also just add real quickly that I'm just very grateful to the National Association of Hispanic Journalists and its members and its leadership for including this particular panel and for this topic within this convention that's happening right now with its 3,500 members and growing, which is just amazing. Thank you for this platform. This image, you know, when I think about this image, I like to go backwards. Sometimes I'm thinking when we're in the grocery store, we're looking at everything that's not that image. We're looking at the pristine, beautiful setups, the displays, the uniformity of the oranges, the strawberries, and the abundance in the land of plenty. A lot of the people that are working in this field and these fields in these conditions like this, they can't even afford to purchase the foods, the very foods that they're picking in these markets. They have to go to food banks. Many of them have to go to food banks. They're on food stamps. The refrigerators are Spartan. Their homes are Spartan. Many of them are homeless. So what we need to do is when we are going to do these purchases, we have to think about, we have to make a conscious decision to know that what is going on with the human beings that are out there, the human beings like us, people have aspirations just like us, that bleed just like us, that are out there doing these sacrifices. And, you know, Dolores mentioned it's 109 degrees in Bakersfield today. You know, the temperatures last week were like in the 120s. Today it's 112 as we speak right now. I'm in the Coachella Valley, just 5 miles from where this is happening. It's getting hotter and hotter and hotter. You know, the idea that I can tell you just, and I don't want to go too long, but I want to be cognizant of the time. I have some chili plants that I'm growing outside. I had to bring them into the house the other day because they were dying. So at some point, we have to come to the reality of climate change. We have to come to the reality as a people together that it's very, very, very real. Where plants are not even growing because it's so hot, no matter how much water you give them. And the same goes for the people.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those reflections. Julie, in your perch, kind of being in the mix with policymakers and understanding kind of the way that images can have an impact on the public. Does something like this, an image like this showing conditions, can it have any sort of effect at that level that you're at? Whether it's issues of climate change, whether it's issues of labor conditions. I mean, just can you kind of give us your perspective from that perch?
Yes, definitely. And thank you so much again for having me. It's great to, again, be with friends and family on the line, but wanted to just really lean into, the fact that I think what's been exposed throughout, the past year plus of the pandemic, throughout the course of, every, year for the last, I think, 5 years at least, each wildfire season has gotten, has become more and more intense and extreme, is really the impact that that it's having on people and individuals. The image that you showed of farm workers working in air quality conditions that are hazardous, that require, if even allowed to work in those conditions, require protective equipment and gear that they were not afforded. It really begins to expose, I think, what for too long has remained in the shadows, that there are people every day sacrificing, engaging in dangerous work in dangerous conditions to put food on our tables. And I think, this image again really speaks to the hazardous conditions of doing so amidst, horrible air quality as a result of fires. But the images that we saw of farm workers continuing to work throughout a global pandemic and continuing to ensure that, we had as individuals throughout our country had, food security and had, the ability to put food on our table. All of that has been exposed in really important ways. And so I think now is the opportunity to look at what are the policy prescriptions to start to deal with this. How do we ensure that those that are picking our food, and many of whom remain undocumented, how do we begin to look at a path to legalization and to citizenship? And I'm, grateful that, there are really important conversations that are happening right now in Congress around the Workforce Modernization Act, a strong bipartisan bill that could provide a pathway to legalization to citizenship for farm workers. And these are the kinds of policy prescriptions that we need that look at addressing, I think the underlying status of the individuals that are picking our food, that deserve a pathway to citizenship, but also the conditions under which they're working in, and how do we ensure that they're seen as essential at every turn, not just during a global pandemic.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for that nuanced response to this. And I think it's important also to add that, at least for me as a storyteller, as a journalist, sometimes I feel like these images do all of the heavy lifting for us, in trying to gauge what the public responds to, but also, telling the true plight of our farm workers and our laborers, just very quickly, the way that social media works, the way that kind of our nation works now, it's everything in chunky bits, and, truly this picture, this told 1,000 words, 1,000 stories within it. So thank you all for giving me your very nuanced reflections on this. I want to switch over to another viral image, and this one is actually kind of close to home for me. I was born and raised in Salinas. This is going to be a two-part discussion about the issues surrounding media coverage of children of farm workers. This first image was taken in Salinas. We have two young children who are sitting in a Taco Bell parking lot trying to access free Wi-Fi so they can complete distance learning for their schools. As we know, when we went to the pandemic, virtually all schools closed and all learning went virtual. So these children didn't have strong enough Wi-Fi access at their home. So they did what they had to in order to maintain their education. The children were the daughters of a single mother who works in the strawberry fields. And it really created an international uproar over educational inequity, over the digital divide. Fortunately, there was a GoFundMe account that raised several $150,000 to kind of help the family. And Julie, I wanted to start with you. As a direct descendant of farm workers, but also someone who has, achieved, great professional and educational success. Your insight on how the coverage of farm worker families and their struggles maybe has evolved over time, and just anything else you want to kind of lend to that conversation about media coverage surrounding farm worker families.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for sharing this image. And I think, it speaks to what too many in our country, I think, experienced during the pandemic, that live in low-income communities or in households that don't have access to quality, affordable internet. We found ourselves in a position during this pandemic where we needed the internet to, not just to be able to sort of socialize and to sort of entertain ourselves, but to learn, to work, to maintain, connectivity to friends and family that we, had to isolate from. And so I think it exposed the huge gaps that exist for farm worker children and for, many children that are living in low-income communities and low-income households. And the real need, again, for us to take action to make sure that this digital divide isn't impacting, farm worker children or any children's ability to get the education that they deserve, to be able to succeed, and have the opportunities that they deserve. And so, again, I think, what we're seeing is a tremendous amount of exposure that, I know growing up in the farm worker movement and, being in a farm labor camp or going and visiting homes of farm workers, I know what those conditions look like. But that's because I've been exposed to them at an early age. And now what we're seeing is more national exposure to these challenges and therefore a more national, sort of outcry and call to action. I will say, though, what has been heartening to see is these college graduation photos that have gone viral of farm worker children in the field with their parents and their diploma and their, caps and gowns. And, I can't help but get emotional about that because it really is. It's inspiring. It's transformative. It's empowering. It's all the things that I think we want to continue to see for, for our families, for our communities. And so I think those images have been equally as powerful and important in really showing what's possible and that we're continuing to, really thrive as a community and as farm workers.
Thank you for that, Julie. And you're jumping the gun a little bit because I do have one more image, so don't worry about it. I'll come right back to that because that's a wonderful reflection. And for you, David Damien, just tell me a little bit because you were a child farm worker, so you probably understand this with an even more nuanced lens as far as what it takes to simultaneously continue your education while being out in the fields. And is there anything you could speak to that and maybe the lack of understanding that is out there in the public regarding that?
Well, it's really, I'd like to comment on this photo as well. But I was when I left MALDEF, I worked on the leadership team for Frontier Communications, which had acquired Verizon, the landlines for Verizon in Florida, Texas, and in the state of California. At the time, it was this was like about 5 years ago, the largest telecoms acquisition in its history at $10.5 billion. And what we really tried to do is make sure that when we were doing this, it was like 5 of us on the team, and we worked with all of the nonprofits, the organizations, including the UFW, the Dolores Huerta Foundation, and MALDEF, to really try to get as much input on how to be able to provide service to reservations, to these agricultural rural areas. And the problem with is that I think that depending on the administration that's in effect, we really have issues around how, when you're looking at utilities, mainstream America is entitled to have electricity, entitled to have water, entitled to have, but there's also programs that exist for electricity. Like, for example, here in Coachella Valley, where it's so hot, there's a lot of programs for the people that are clearly not enough that can't afford to pay those bills. $300, $350 a month for a small apartment. It's a lot of money. But I really believe we have to get in a space in America where the internet is available as a right, just like health insurance. To be able to have a right to an education, you need the internet. Bottom line, and as Julie mentioned earlier, is that it exposed that in order to have a proper education, you need the internet. So we have to come together as America to look at and put pressure on those that feel that it's not a right, but it is a right. Technology is a right, and that's how we see it.
Okay. And Dolores, I wanted you to chime in last here, just because you have such a wide gauge of knowledge, having seen the early media coverage around not only farm workers but their families, to seeing an image like this and seeing how it's kind of put a new light on the struggles of farm worker families. I'm wondering if there's any way you could talk about the evolution of coverage of farm worker families in particular, or just if you want to share any thoughts that are conjured up by this image.
Well, we know that the farm worker children have been they have been so devastated by the pandemic and by the lack of broadband. I mean, we have a big education program with the Dolores Huerta Foundation, and we have education committees all up and down. We're working in 4 different counties, Kern, Tulare, and Fresno County, and also in the Antelope Valley. And we've been fighting the discrimination against Black and Brown students with our foundation, including suing the different school boards for the discrimination against Black and Brown children. We have one major lawsuit against the current high school district here in Bakersfield, California, where they actually expelled 2,100 students in 1 year. From 2,100 expulsions, we have it down to 21. And then we're working in other school districts where the discrimination against our Black students is very, very severe. And we're making great gains. We have an education committee in every chapter of our foundation, and they make recommendations, and over 50% of the recommendations that our education committees, these are the farm workers and their children that form these committees to make these recommendations. But our children have been devastated by the pandemic because of the lack of broadband, because of the lack of computers for the children. And it was very, very difficult for the families. And it's going to take a lot of work to help our children to catch up where they should be. They were behind to begin with, and now the pandemic has devastated. So education is absolutely crucial, not only for them to be able to have the equitable education that they deserve, but then also we talk about looking at the curriculum, what is being taught in our schools. Well, what needs to be taught in our schools are the things that are going to give our children the pride that they need. You know, the ethnic studies, their own history, the history of the Latino, Mexican, etc. contribution to our society. So these are the things that we're fighting for in California. We are going to have ethnic studies now. It's going to be in the high schools. We need to put it down into the elementary schools, and we need to fight for more resources for our teachers also, so they can have smaller class sizes. The good thing is, and that the Biden administration is going to getting us more access, more resources for education, and we need that so desperately. Our kids need so much help, and I would love to ask all of the journalists that are in our event today, please kind of do a focus group, a story on the different school districts and see where they're at. Many of our school districts, unfortunately, are controlled by people that do not want the kind of historical contribution education that our people have done, including what the farm workers do every single day, as we said before, of feeding the nation. So, Franklin Delano Roosevelt said that education was the soul of our country. It is the soul of our country, especially in this critical time when we have to counter so much ignorance that is out there, and so much of that ignorance that is being focused and where a lot of our community is being attacked instead of being not only protected but also respected and revered.
Great. I'm really glad that you brought up the issue of ethnic studies in our education system right now. I personally work as a public relations communications director for the high school district in Salinas. The issue of ethnic studies and particular critical race theory is a hot button issue right now. It's causing some division in our community. I won't get into that discussion here, but I will make a public ask of each of you. If there's a way y'all can help me and support my school district in this new situation we're facing, I would love to get your contact information to get a cosign from y'all if you could help to put some weight behind this. But I'm being selfish now with that. So let me move forward. This last image, I think it's my favorite, and it was alluded to a few moments ago by Julie. I'm taking an excerpt from a USA Today article published on June 18th. Throughout high school and college, Jennifer Rocha would plant strawberries with her parents from 6 p.m. to 3 a.m. And then she'd sleep a few hours and get ready for school, but she never complained or slacked off. She said she knew she was making her immigrant parents proud. And on June 13th, Rocha graduated from UC San Diego, and she wanted to honor her parents' hard work. So she coordinated a photo shoot in the strawberry fields. They worked night after night. And I just want to say, I feel like this is this is a beautiful, wonderful statement to show of her pride, but I also feel like this is a statement of resistance. And I just see a sense of a warrior's fearlessness in this image, like thumbing your nose at the hyperbole of right-wing conservatives who spent most of their lives trying to drag the image of migrant workers. So this to me is a message of defiance. And I'm just curious, I'll start with you, David Damien, because you are, in fact, you were a child farm worker, just give me your thoughts on this wonderful image and kind of the statement that it's making. I'll just ask you in general, just a general reflection.
Yeah. So when I saw this, it provoked a different thought and a feeling for me because, in the summertime, what we would do is we would leave Yuma and then we'd go stay with my mom in Tucson, and then she would drive we would go stay with the family over there in Buckeye, and work in the fields. The cotton where we would clean the rows, not pick the cotton, but clean the rows. And, when that was all over, we had, raise a little money to go to back to school, to buy our books, to buy some school clothes and have nice clothes to wear when we went back to school at Yuma High School. But, the kids would say, so what did you do for summer? Where did you go? And they would say, oh, we went to Hawaii, some of the kids. And some of the kids would be saying, my mom took us to New York. We went to go see a Broadway play. And, those are things that were just totally out of our, just out of our sphere, we just didn't, and what did you do, David? And well, I would make something up. I'm really ashamed to say, because, we just didn't have that pride. It was something to be ashamed of. And what really brings me a lot of joy is these young ladies in the fields, and like a lot of the young people, they're taking ownership of their story and their narratives because there's a support system for that. There's people like Dolores and Julie's grandfather and her father and family, and those are the activists that have created the platform and the foundation for people to be able to expose themselves in this light, which brings light to other people. It gives other young people to position to the permission to do the same, to bring light to their story and to be very, very proud of it. I look at these parents and I'm thinking, the sacrifices that they made for her to do that. And she's right there in them. It's just, the whole family support system and a community that supports this young woman. That's what I see. And also everybody across America who liked it and made this viral feels the same way. It's a beautiful thing. Just powerful image.
Thank you for that. And I especially wanted to share this image because it is a prime example of how positive imagery that reinforces a wonderful narrative about farm worker children can be picked up by the national media through viral media. So Dolores, I'm just curious if you have any reflection. Tell me the sense of pride you must feel, and how the images of farm workers compared to when you were first starting the movement to now, how basically in at least in this instance managed to flip the script on it.
So, Marcos, I think that's a great question because when Cesar and I started the union, I remember going to Sacramento to the legislature, and you would have the growers stand up before committees and say, we do the public a favor because we hire these degenerates, these winos that nobody else wants to hire. And so we're doing the public a favor. And they would denigrate farm workers because that's how they would justify the fact that they were not giving them toilets in the fields or cold drinking water, not giving them a living wage. And I remember going up to one of the growers and I said, one of the grower representatives and said, if you ever say that about farm workers again, I'm going to talk about how you are treating the workers like they were slaves, So they cut it out. But I want to thank all of the journalists that are here today because it was your work, and also David Damien with his movies that he has produced, and of course with the hard work that Cesar and the rest of the farm worker leaders did to change that image of farm workers. So you don't hear that kind of talk anymore. However, the policies, California and Hawaii are the only two states that have laws that the farm workers can get unemployment insurance, and that they can form a union. And all of the other states in the United States do not, to this day, do not have those laws. And I should make the exception of New York State, which in 2019 finally passed a bill for farm workers' rights. And that effort was led by Carrie Kennedy, Robert Kennedy's daughter, and the farm worker organizations that are in New York State. So we still have a long way to go, because the majority of the farm workers, well, let me put it this way, the majority of the states still do not have any kind of protections for the farm workers. The only thing that they do have are the toilets, because we made that into a national law that they had to provide the farm workers with bathrooms. And there's a few other protections, like if they travel between states, they have to provide them transportation and food and shelter. But many times those laws, even those laws, are sometimes they're not really enforced. And one thing that we haven't really mentioned at all is the pesticides that the farm workers are subjected to, and these farm worker children that are being born with the different types of deformities, neurological damages. And the Dolores Huerta Foundation, we are also working on those issues. And if anybody up there knows of any farmer child that has been hurt in any way by pesticides, please contact us at doloreshuerta.org. That is our website, okay? Because we're out there every single day. Our foundation, we have 100 people going door to door in the heat, and phone banking, getting people signed up for vaccines, and going into the whole health area, because farm workers are so far behind, even today as we speak. And again, we want to thank the journalists for bringing to the attention of the general public, so they should never, ever, ever forget what farm workers do for them every single day.
Dolores, I just wanted to also mention, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think it's important also to talk about the work you've been doing around food banking and those types of things, if you don't mind talking about that, because when we were speaking the other day, you were telling me that. So I just think it's important as well.
Yeah, we have been doing food banks for the farm workers every single weekend. We're also doing vaccine clinics to get them, get them vaccinated against COVID. As by the way, the United Farm Workers also, in fact, the vice president's the wife, the first lady, Jill, she came to Delano, and Julie was there accompanying her, and then that was such a marvelous event. You had literally hundreds of farm workers that were vaccinated by the United Farm Workers, and also with the Dolores Huerta Foundation. So we're on the ground, and we're continue doing the work.
And I'd also like to plug, if it's okay, because we have our Farm Worker Justice. We're at www.farmworkerjustice.org. And we have a new documentary that our health team, amazing documentary that our health team produced. We're really proud of it. We'd love to show it to anybody who's interested. You can contact me at ddfigueroa@farmworkerjustice.org, and I'll put you in touch with our brilliant health team that put this together, along with this whole PSA series that we put together that we're going to be releasing with Líderes Campesinas, which are also the actors in the documentary, in the PSAs, and then it features the work that they're doing in Oxnard and the trials and tribulations they faced and are facing during the COVID-19 era.
Thank you, David Damien, for facilitating both of those discussions. And I'm going to get to you, Julie, in one moment, so you can kind of wrap up the discussion around this image. I just want to let the audience know we will have a brief Q&A here at the conclusion of this last question with Julie. We already have a couple of questions queued up. So now would be an ideal time if you wanted to submit some questions so we can get them in the queue. And thank you to the audience for staying tuned in with us here. We really appreciate this. We couldn't have done this without you. And so finally, Julie, I know you were so enthusiastic about commenting on this particular image. And so I also wanted to frame it, as an educated Chicana yourself, as someone who went through the universities and achieved, this great success now as a professional. Tell me from that perspective, the sense of empowerment you get in seeing an image like this and seeing it, seeing the signal boosted through national media.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it gives me so much pride, again, to see, and I think you had referenced that it was a real revolutionary act, right? Of young people reclaiming their roots and being able to really, show, I think, the country, the world, just what it means to be children of farm workers and the important contributions that farm workers make to our lives every day. And so I just see it again as just a real, a powerful image that is, I think, really reigniting the importance and the power of farm workers. And growing up in the farm worker movement, I had the pleasure of seeing and sort of holding the farm workers up as in the highest regard. It was sort of like, when the farm workers were around, it was sort of we were in service to them, and that's what this image really evokes for me, is that sense of how can we continue to give back to those who've given not just our families but our country, our world so much.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, so we are entering the Q&A portion of this. We'll spend about 10 minutes, as much, and then I'll feed them out to each of the panelists, and it's pretty much going to be a free for all. So jump in, whoever wants to jump in with these questions, and then we'll wrap it up with some final thoughts, and anyone that wants to kind of plug stuff at the end, we'll give you that opportunity to do that. So the first question, this is from Robert Valencia, Spanish language media strategist for Earth Justice. We've worked with Alianza Nacional de Campesinas and United Farm Workers to help campesinos, campesinas for heat stroke, pesticide use, and other issues. So how can we help as an organization to further the cause on behalf of campesinos, campesinas? And Dolores, maybe do you want to take a crack at that one?
Well, yes, we have to come together, especially on the whole issue of education. Because we know, as I said before, that our farm worker children are so far behind, and which means that we need to really put pressure on the school boards to make them do what they have to do. In our area, for instance, we had to fight to make sure that they were able to provide the meals for the farm worker children, during the so-called summer school area, because they were not going to do that. And so we have to be very, very vigilant about what's happening there, especially in our local areas with our local school districts. Sometimes we kind of think, oh, everything is going on okay, but they're not. So that's one of the places we need a lot of help in. And then, of course, getting the word out to farm workers that they do need to get vaccinated, because we do have a lot of false news, you might say, fake media. A lot of farm workers are getting messages from some of these a quote unquote Christian organization that they shouldn't get vaccinated. And just yesterday in Bakersfield, California, in Kern County, we had 136 new cases of COVID. I mean, so we need help from everybody out there to please tell the farm workers that they do need to get vaccinated. There's vaccine clinics that are going on all the time. I mean, we have our organization, Dolores Huerta Foundation, we're doing them all the time. The farm workers is doing them all the time, and other organizations. So we need a lot of help just to constantly, and we know that sometimes because the farm workers are working, and sometimes some of these resources are not at the time that they need. Oh, the other thing too, get the word out about the child tax credit. A lot of the farmers didn't earn enough money to file their income taxes, and they're going to be left out of this. So we got to get the word out there, and especially the undocumented people. Don't be afraid. Get your IT number and file your tax return, because so you can get this amazing benefit that the Biden administration, that Julie's a part of, is bringing to all of our families. Okay, to end the child poverty of the farm workers themselves. So reaching out, getting those messages out is so important.
Does anyone else want to chime in on kind of what can be done to assist their organization in helping campesinos, campesinas?
We at Farm Worker Justice have a really good relationship with Farm Worker Justice. Years and years with them, and our legal team works with them. And I have personal friends that work at Earth Justice. They do wonderful work, and they just whatever you can. If there's anything that we're not engaged in that would like to be engaged in, please contact us. Earth Justice is an amazing, amazing organization that does wonderful work on environmental justice. Just really, really amazing work. I have not just myself, but a lot of people have deep respect for the work that they do and their
Excellent.
interest in the Latino community and Latino issues, specifically farm worker issues.
Julie, any thoughts?
I would just say, we are coming in as a new administration, but I know at least under the Obama administration, there were important efforts underway that Earth Justice actually helped to spearhead to address, issues of pesticide exposure and to also set regulations around the sort of minimum age that individuals could actually handle pesticides because and I believe actually the last administration rolled back this rule, but the laws say that 16-year-olds can handle pesticides, and we know looking at just sort of human development that 16-year-olds are still, their brains are still developing and forming, and to have the kind of exposure to toxic chemicals and pesticides at such an early age could be very devastating for their own development and their health. And so I think continuing to work with our administration now that we are in office to look at what can we do to reinstate some of these critical policies, rules that protect farm workers, or children of farm workers, that protect our communities, and that we know are really based on the science and good public health measures that we need to, again, reinstate and enforce.
Okay, thank you. This is not for the panel. I just want to address this question that came in the chat. Has the photo of the farm workers in the field while the fires raged been shared on social media or published by any media outlets? I have seen it on social media accounts from prestigious journalists. Frank Somerville in the Bay Area in particular shed some light on this last year during the California fires. So yeah, in a sense it has been, but it definitely needs some more attention, and that's going to lead into this next question for the panel. We have about 3 minutes left, so if we're going to have to do kind of a lightning round here. I'm a reporter. This is from Gloria Rodriguez. I'm a reporter in Raleigh, North Carolina. What are some other issues farm workers are facing that you don't think gets reported enough in the media? That's such a loaded question, but if y'all can just chime in with 30 seconds each, that would be great. Whoever wants to start.
Hunger. There's hunger. I just think it's a fundamental right to have food. And we as a society need to really solve that issue. It can be solved in the United States of America, the land of the plenty.
Dolores?
I would say unemployment insurance, so that people in the other states do not have, only Hawaii and California. And of course, this is something that farm workers can drop from when they are working between crops. It's very desperately needed. And some of these other protections like full workers' compensation when they get hurt on the job. And of course, the right to organize. That we need those laws to protect farm workers.
Okay. Julie?
And lastly, I would just say housing. I think when we look at the significant housing shortages that we see across the country, especially when it comes to affordable housing, that issue is only exacerbated tenfold for farm worker communities. And when you see the kinds of conditions that they're forced to live in, it is inhumane. It's not something that you would imagine seeing in the 21st century, let alone in our country.
Okay, thank you all. We're about 2 minutes away from wrapping up here. Oh, go ahead, David.
Super, super important. I just have, Dolores is celebrating 91 years on this earth. Okay, Dolores is having a big event, and I think we owe her at least a platform to talk about this huge event that she has coming up.
Yes, and that's what's going to be my last thing. Everyone can just jump in now if you're with your final thoughts or anything that you need to plug before we sign off.
Well, I can get the information on the event. It's going to be August the 21st. It's going to be a virtual event, and we want to have everybody to come and join us with my 91st virtual birthday celebration. Okay, August 21st, and you can get more information on our website, doloreshuerta.org. Okay, that's easy to remember. That's DOLORESHUERTA.org, and we want to welcome everybody. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And we're celebrating 40 years at Farm Worker Justice on September 14th in Los Angeles. If you want any information, we can give you that. And also the Cesar Chavez Foundation is having their gala that's coming up, and they do it annually. And so that's coming up. So please look up we need support, and exposure is one of the most important things that we can get, because it helps elevate our brand and our missions. And the UFW.
And we want to thank all the journalists for getting the word out there, and not letting the American public forget that the farm workers are out there working for you every single day. We want to thank all of the Latino journalists out there, because we really need your support, and we're very, very appreciative of what you do. Thank you.
Julie?
And I'll just add, support all the things that David and Dolores mentioned. It really is, sort of tremendous to see so many organizations that are advocating on behalf of farm workers. And we know that there's a lot of work to do, but together, as we've always said, si se puede.
My apologies to Vanessa Graber and Zita Arocha. We were unable to get to their questions, but thank you so much for tuning in. I want to thank my panelists. This was an amazing opportunity for me, and I was overcome with emotion. Thank you, David, Damien, and Dolores, for bearing with me in the early going here. I'm just very proud to be a Chicano today and sitting here with all of you. Thank you to our audience, NHJ 2021. I will be signing off. Peace.
Thank you, Marcos.
Thank you, Marcos.
Thank you.